Australia has had quite a harsh lockdown for a couple of months straight. Seems to have weathered quite well, judging by the headlines. How's your economy been doing throughout this year?
Yeah, well, Australia's situation is going to be different from a lot of countries. It's an island. It's relatively, albeit a huge island, it is relatively remote. So what the Australian government did from January last year was begin to restrict entry into the country. And now there are very strict rules, and there have been for a year, on entry into Australia. So COVID is not indigenous to Australia, so can only be brought in. So if you control the people who come into your country, that will stop the spread of COVID. And there have been very few cases of COVID in Australia and extremely few deaths. So it's been, I think, a little over 100 deaths from COVID. So what is the economic impact? A lot has been closed down, and from time to time in particular parts of Australia, there have been real lockdowns. And the federal government has essentially funded all of this. So you have seen a huge blowout in the country's budget deficit and an explosion of public debt. But unemployment, the government spending has worked, I suppose. Unemployment has not risen too much and is now below 6%. And the economy is recovering and recovering quite strongly. So, by the time you get to June this year, the Australian economy will hardly have shrunk at all over the previous 12 months. So, but Australia's, I'm not sure this is an example to the rest of the world, because Australia is a huge island and it's easy to control people coming in and out. But, industries like the tourist industry, international students and so on have suffered grievously. But on the other hand, there has been a very big increase in commodity prices. So iron ore exports, coal exports, food exports, they've all been going very well. So Australia hasn't done too badly compared to the rest of the world.
One thing is for certain, some sectors have been hit harder than others, and human conduct, human behavior, not just as an individual but as a consumer, has also changed, of course, inevitably as a result. We can no longer go freely shopping as we used to do. E-shopping now has taken over in many regards. What changes do you think to human conduct as a consumer and will have changed, but more importantly, will be with us for some time to come, perhaps even in a post-pandemic world?
Yes, well, there are a whole lot of questions there. Whether there'll ever be something called a post-pandemic world is an interesting question. But there'll be vaccines and the risks will be minimized, but COVID won't go away, so people are going to have to learn to live with it. So as they learn to live with it, in countries that have very severe restrictions on day-to-day life, as the restrictions are lifted, some things will return to as they were. But I would say there are a couple of things, at least in Western countries, that will be permanent changes. One you mentioned is that there will be more emphasis on online shopping. In the UK, for example, online shopping is having a huge impact on high street shops, traditional shops, and that was happening before the pandemic. So that pattern will, I think, be accelerated, and I think you'll see that in my own country, Australia, and through Europe and North America. I think in terms of shopping malls and the whole process of shopping, there will be a change, not a revolution, but a change of emphasis. I think the second thing is work. Polling is showing people don't mind working from home, but they don't always want to work from home. So I think you will find in both the public and the private sector, people taking maybe 2 days a week to work from home instead of 5 days a week going to the office. They've learned the huge advantage of not commuting, for example. In the UK, people are getting out of bed on average half an hour later than they used to before the pandemic, which makes a bit of sense to sleep through the lockdown for as long as you possibly can. But seriously, I think that there will be that change in work patterns. That means that corporates and even governments will need less space, and they will have less office space. And with less office space, that will have an effect on the commercial property market in major cities. So I don't think those markets are going to return to exactly what they were before. So, I mean, I think there are a couple of changes. I think a couple of social changes that will become locked in. But I think also the huge increase in government spending right around the world. It's going to be interesting to see what medium-term consequences that has, and what impact that's going to have on living standards down the track. It's okay now, but down the track, what will be the impact? And what will be the social impact? I think that's hard to judge.